This whole family needs to be validated.
In my head.
So I'm not normally a Dr. Phil watcher, but I saw the title of today's show, which was My Narcissistic Ex Allows Our Daughter to Be a Webcam Model and Married Someone Her Age, something like that. And I was like, okay, I need to watch this because I know that a lot of my viewers, they come here for information about narcissism and narcissistic people. And I thought, all right, I got to dig in and see what's going on here. So one of the things that I noticed watching this episode was that we never really established why the ex was narcissistic. We never talked about him being grandiose. We never talked about him being attention-seeking. We never talked about an apparent lack of empathy or an impairment in empathy or anything like that. And so I was left wondering, like, well, why is she saying he's a narcissist in the first place? And we never really got to that. I apologize for any wind noise. It's windy out today. So I wanted to bring up this whole issue of the narcissist label because this is something that happens a lot. We get so caught up on trying to label somebody or label a situation, and getting stuck on the label is not actually helping us to sort out what's going on. What was going on is that we seem to have a daughter who was caught in between two parents who just couldn't get together on what was going on and how to raise the daughter correctly, and they were trying to prove each other right and prove that they were the one who was in the daughter's life the most, and the daughter is suffering because of all of this. One of the main things that I took away from this was this back and forth fighting between the parents. They were always trying to justify like why they were the better parent or why they were in the life of the daughter more often. And if we just take the daughter off the table for a second and just look at the two of them, they continually got defensive, and you can't have empathy and you can't have understanding when you're defensive. And each time a topic was brought up, they tried to justify their side, they tried to explain themselves. And because of that, they weren't able to understand where the other person was coming from. And they also got so caught up in doing that they weren't paying attention to how it was affecting their daughter. I really want to emphasize this point because a lot of people, they come online looking for information about narcissism and they get so caught up in trying to justify why they were the right one and their partner was the wrong one and their partner was a narcissist, and that's not really helping you, and it's not helping anybody else. Of course, it's helpful to understand the situation and understand what's going on, but if all you're doing is defending yourself and justifying yourself, you're missing important pieces of what's going on. At the very least, that's how it appeared on TV, and Dr. Phil made mention of this actually when the daughter was speaking about what went on between her parents, and he said to her, you don't know what went on between them. And we don't know as viewers everything that went on between them. We don't see everything that's said, and all we're seeing is what's on TV. So we have to be aware of that when we look at these situations, that we don't have all the facts. When somebody else talks about their relationship in our lives, we don't know everything that went on. We only see one side. If it's a friend of ours, we're probably going to hear our friend's side much more than we hear somebody else's side. And I bring this up because this is something that I went through, where I had a relationship that broke apart. I had people that listened to me, I had people that listened to them, and unfortunately, I don't think enough people listened to both of us to really get a true understanding of what was going on. This is why when it comes to these kinds of situations, I advocate for validating both people's experiences, because both people are right. It's pretty rare that people are going to be completely lying. If they are lying, it's just because they believe something that's untrue, but they're not necessarily just lying to lie. Maybe I should do another video about this sometime, because I feel like people mistake what lying really is. Lying isn't about always deceiving people just to get what you want, although that's definitely part of it sometimes. Lying is also about protecting yourself and defending yourself. And anyway, what really matters is that you listen to people, you hear their experience, you hear what they're saying, what they're thinking, their emotions. This is what therapists do, and this is what we should do in our everyday lives as much as possible, is to try to listen to people, to have conversations. It's this shutting down the conversations that really gets us to the point where we see like what we saw on Dr. Phil today, where a whole family is torn apart from not having healthy discussions about things. This would probably be a good time to remind you that I am not a therapist, I'm not a professional, I can't diagnose people or anything, but I like to talk about these things as a concerned person, for concern for how we all talk about our mental health. So let's get back to the daughter, because this is what this is really about, the daughter's situation. I know that the parents obviously have their own unresolved hurts, they obviously have their own things to work on, but the daughter is suffering the most here, and you could see this. She was confused, she was anxious, she was scared to even be on the show. She referred to it as her last hope. Now, at one point, the daughter was asked by Dr. Phil, like, what's your internal thoughts? What goes through your head every day? And she just talked about this constant stream of negativity about herself, that she's not good enough, that she's a failure, that she's never going to be able to work things out, she's never going to be able to accomplish things, all those kinds of thoughts. And I'm sure we're all familiar with that kind of pattern of thinking. What concerns me is that, yes, obviously this is pretty clearly anxiety from the way that she's talking about everything. I also worry that there could be some kind of trauma from what's been going on with her parents and the way that her emotional needs probably have been neglected during all of this turmoil that's been going on. And we know that one of the symptoms of PTSD is having constant negative thoughts about yourself and ruminating over it. And we know that when you're a child, an adolescent, growing up in this kind of situation, you're still learning how to deal with the world, and you still very much rely on your parents. And if your parents aren't emotionally there for you, you could develop trauma symptoms. You could have some attachment trauma, as I've been talking about here on my channel. So that concerns me. Obviously, I can't diagnose that, but I see it, and I just want to bring your attention to it in case it's something that you're going through. Maybe you could see a therapist, talk with a therapist about if that's something you're experiencing. Something else that really hurt me to hear her say was that she felt like she couldn't move on, and she kind of felt like she was in between her parents. It's this feeling that happens with every child of divorce, feeling like it's our fault. Somehow we had to put it together, and we should be able to just get over this and move on and have healthy relationships. Why are we not able to do it? And that makes me sad, because it's not her fault what her parents have gone through. It's not her fault that she feels this way, but she feels like it's her responsibility. She feels like it's her duty to pull through and get it together. And unfortunately, in society, this is the message that we get, especially here in the United States. We often hear this message of every individual person has to be able to make it for themselves. You're not good enough if you can't just get over things. And we hear things like, why don't you just move on already? This happened years ago. And those messages are very harmful to somebody who's been through something like this. Somebody like this daughter needs to be validated, needs to be listened to. We need to understand, why does she feel this way? What has she gone through? How can we help her start to change those thoughts in her head? Essentially, what she needs is the empathy that she hasn't been receiving from her parents, because her parents have been too busy trying to get their own validation. This whole family needs to be validated. This whole family needs to be listened to, and somebody needs to come in and listen to their emotional needs and help them start to wrap their brains around why they feel the way that they do, what's gone on, because they have been through a lot. Now, I'm really not trying to point any fingers here. I'm just telling you what I observed. There's obviously things that I missed because there was so much that happened in this episode, but something that concerned me was the father allowing her to do the social webcam modeling stuff because she was anxious, and his thought was, well, if she can't be out doing jobs that other people would do, this is a way for her to make money, and that's okay. And I don't want to shame what she's doing at all. There's people who do it, totally acceptable, totally fine. My concern is that she's doing it because of this anxiety, and if she had a choice, if she didn't have the anxiety, maybe this isn't what she would be doing. What concerned me was that the father seemed to be enabling it by encouraging her to keep doing it, because his thought process was, well, she can't do other stuff, so she might as well do that. But she has to be challenged to try to do other stuff. And again, I don't mean forcing her to do anything. I know society sometimes thinks we need to have a heavy hand and you just need to suck it up and deal with it. But actually the opposite is what's true. I feel like she needs somebody to really listen to her and to understand her and to really get what's going on, so that you can slowly, gently introduce her to being exposed to social situations where she can feel more comfortable. She needs somebody that she can rely on. I know she said that her father is her rock. She may feel that way because her father might be enabling her. But what she needs is somebody who will listen to her, validate her, but also gently challenge her and gently push her to continue growing. And I don't see that with the father, and that concerns me. Again, nothing against the father here. I can't diagnose. We don't know the whole situation. This is just what I'm observing from the TV show. And just quickly to jump back to the whole narcissistic thing, for somebody who was supposed to be a narcissist, the father was doing a lot of crying. And I do know that people who have narcissistic tendencies can do crocodile tears, and I know that they can get emotional in certain situations and do the tears to get attention seeking. But it wasn't the feeling that I got watching this. You could kind of just see it was an emotional time, and I don't really believe that generally that this father is narcissistic. And this brings me back to a point that I try to emphasize a lot here on this channel, which is that we all can be narcissistic. We all have the capacity to have a narcissistic trait. And so we should be aware that we all act narcissistically sometimes. So the mother may not be incorrect in saying that he's narcissistic. He may sometimes be narcissistic, but it doesn't seem like that's his entire personality. It seems like he's able to let go and admit, as he did many times, that he makes mistakes, that he screws up, and he seems to actually feel bad about them. So as viewers, I think what we should do is to have some empathy for what everybody's been going through in this family, to understand that this is rough for everybody involved. Unfortunately, it's really rough on the daughter, but nobody is having a good time around this, and we shouldn't judge them. We shouldn't look for things that they're doing wrong. We shouldn't put them on the defensive by attacking who's right and who's wrong. We should really just listen, because we all experience these things in our lives. If we don't experience them directly, we know somebody who's been through something like this, and we would all be better off if we listen to them. If you'd like to learn more about mental health, head on over to youtube.com/RyanLiberty, hit subscribe. Thank you as always to my patrons who make videos like this possible. If you want to help me on my mission of humanizing mental health, head on over to Patreon. That link will be down below. If you watched this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but please, let's be respectful. I will not approve comments that have not been respectful. There will be a second part to this I'll be watching tomorrow, so I hope you'll watch along with me and we can learn a little bit more about what's going on with this family. As always, thank you for joining me out here today. I'll see you around tomorrow.